People respect you more when you have money. They listen faster, they interrupt you less, and they assume you're competent before you speak, even though nothing about your personality changes. Your tone stays the same and your intelligence stays the same. Yet suddenly your opinions land, and that shift messes with your head because it exposes something uncomfortable. Respect was never about who you were. It was about what your money signaled before you opened your mouth. When you don't have money, conversations feel heavier in ways you can't fully name. You feel it before you speak, in the pause you take to check the room, in the way you wait for someone else to go first, hesitating even when your thought is complete, rehearsing sentences internally and testing different versions before choosing the safest one. You soften statements into questions so they don't sound like challenges. You add disclaimers so no one thinks you're reaching too far, and you explain your thinking before anyone asks because being misunderstood feels costly. You notice how often you're mid-sentence when someone cuts in, how often you let it happen because stopping it feels awkward, how silence follows your words more than engagement, how eye contact breaks sooner than it should, and how someone else can restate your point with confidence and suddenly the room reacts. You tell yourself you need to speak up more, that you need to be bolder, clearer, more confident, assuming the problem is internal, replaying conversations afterward and adjusting future versions of yourself based on past dismissals, slowly learning which opinions are safe to share and which ones cost too much energy, until you start editing yourself before you even realize you're doing it. But when you do have money, the friction disappears before you realize it existed. People pause when you speak, they don't rush to fill silence, they don't talk over you as easily, they let you finish without redirecting the conversation. They ask follow-up questions instead of challenging the premise. They nod while you're talking instead of scanning the room. And they reference what you said earlier as if it mattered the first time. The same ideas land with more weight, the same delivery feels more solid, and that contrast doesn't feel rewarding so much as unsettling, because nothing inside you changed, only the response did. You remember how much effort used to go into being taken seriously, how much emotional energy you spent managing perception, how carefully you chose words to avoid sounding naive, entitled, or out of place. Remembering shrinking thoughts before they left your mouth and holding back opinions until someone safer said them first, confusing politeness with survival. Now the effort is gone, but the respect is higher, and that doesn't feel earned, it feels automatic, like a switch flipped without your consent. Most people learn how respect works long before they understand money itself, learning it at home by watching who gets listened to, who makes decisions without explaining themselves, who is allowed to be tired without being questioned, and who can say no without justifying it. Money isn't discussed directly because it doesn't need to be. It shows up as posture, authority, whose stress is treated as important, whose time is protected, and whose mistakes are forgiven faster. So your brain absorbs a pattern without language, linking money with legitimacy, credibility, and being taken seriously, and with not having to prove your place. That association forms through repetition, not agreement, settling quietly and staying dormant for years until the moment it activates in your own life. Which is why the shift feels disorienting as it collides with the identity you built while being overlooked, the version of you that learned to over-prepare, anticipate resistance, and stay agreeable to remain included. That version doesn't disappear just because people treat you differently now. It stays alert, and your nervous system stays alert too, because it doesn't track fairness or intention, it tracks patterns. Money makes you predictable to other people. Predictability reduces uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty feels like safety. So when you don't have money, your presence feels harder to place. People don't know how much authority to assign you or whether to defer or challenge, deciding moment by moment, interrupting casually, explaining things you already understand, testing boundaries without realizing they're doing it, not because they're malicious, but because the signal is weak. When you do have money, the signal is strong. People place you instantly in their mental map, and once you're placed, the evaluation stops, which is why the respect feels immediate and impersonal, with no conversation marking the change, no acknowledgement of the years before, and no apology for how invisible you were. That's where the discomfort sharpens, because if respect arrives with money, it raises a question about the years without it, whether you were actually less capable or navigating a system that wasn't listening yet. And that question doesn't feel abstract. It feels personal, rewriting old memories of meetings where you left feeling small, conversations where you doubted yourself for days, and moments where you assumed you lacked presence, now seeing the same behavior land differently. That realization creates a fracture inside you, where one part feels relief and another feels exposed, because the relief confirms something painful, that being overlooked wasn't imagined, it was patterned. So even as people treat you better now, your body doesn't relax, it stays vigilant, tracking reactions, noticing how quickly money becomes tied to credibility, and how easily financial changes start to feel like social risk. Loss aversion shows up around respect rather than comfort, around how people look at you when you speak, while present bias pulls your attention into microsignals like the pause before someone responds, the shift in tone when money enters the room, and whether someone defers you or corrects you. Guilt loops surface quietly, especially if people around you struggled before, because being taken seriously now can feel like crossing a line you weren't meant to cross, while money dysmorphia distorts your sense of stability so that no amount feels fully secure, since the respect feels conditional, and conditional respect never feels safe. Neural pathways strengthen without permission, linking money with voice, space, and being assumed instead of examined, creating an invisible ceiling not on earning, but on ease, because ease now feels dependent on a signal you don't fully trust. So the loop tightens. Money becomes proof that you're allowed to speak plainly, disagree without consequence, and take up space without justification. But that also means losing money starts to feel like losing legitimacy rather than comfort, which is why decisions feel heavier than they should. Pressure builds even when nothing is objectively wrong, and your relationship with money tightens instead of loosening. The original truth gets buried beneath all of this, that your worth never moved and only the signal did. And once you start noticing this pattern, it shows up everywhere. In meetings where certain voices are trusted immediately, in families where opinions carry different weight based on who earns more, and in friendships where advice lands differently once success becomes visible. Money didn't change who you are. It revealed what was being listened to all along. And once you see that clearly, you're left sitting with a question that doesn't resolve, wondering how much of what you called confidence was really permission.